J.J. Persis this evening, discussing her book, Zodiac Lovers, I Remember. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have a cell phone on you, most of us have cell phones, just put them on silent or vibrate during the presentation. If you'd like to purchase a copy of the book, the purchase tonight supports this great author and this humble institution and is greatly appreciated. Books are for sale at the front register. And then after the reading and the Q&A, the author will be signing at the back desk. So please join us back there. When you're at the registers, please consider joining our email list. We have great events like this one almost every night of the week. JJ was born in Tehran, Iran in 1978 during the birth of the Islamic Revolution. Her family fled Iran during the peak of the Iran-Iraq War in 1984 to escape the turmoil within the country. Their journey in search of freedom would lead them to San Antonio, Texas, where JJ grew up and attended college at the University of the Incarnate Word, majoring in communication, arts, and psychology. JJ's love of the Iranian culture and entertainment world gave her a pathway to hosting and producing a weekly Iranian variety show in San Antonio for over a decade. In California, her successful career in retail management would take her back and forth between Los Angeles and Orange County, until she finally decided to reside in Hollywood. Surviving what she considered to be a rocky journey, she would put her emotions and thoughts to paper. From her life in exile to her failed attempts at love, JJ took every opportunity to learn from her past and mistakes. She started her own blog, JJ's Journey, and in 2013 began to write her first book, the one you will see tonight, Zodiac Lovers. JJ continues to reside in Los Angeles, amongst the largest Iranian community outside of Iran, a place known to many in the City of Angels and to some as Tarantulas. Did I say that right? I was working on it for a while. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome JJ Persis.
Dan had no idea he's no longer living in Los Angeles. He's living in Iran, surrounded by so many Iranians. Thank you, Dan. Thank you to the Book Soup for hosting the event, and thank you for all of you for coming out tonight. Monday nights can be kind of tricky, so I appreciate your efforts to be here with me. I can sum up Zodiac Lovers probably in one sentence, and that is that a search for love leads to an identity. Each chapter that I wrote, I closed it with a line of poetry, and one of my own favorites is that you were the light I was running toward, but when I arrived, all I saw was my own reflection. And I think that I finally realized that what I was really searching for was myself, and not love or someone to love me, but myself. The narration of Zodiac Lovers is set in St. Petersburg, Russia, in a future date for purposes that I discuss in the afterword of the book. And right now I'm going to read to you from the preface of the book and then the story itself, and afterwards we'll do a Q&A session. So if you have your book and you want to follow along, if not, you can listen. But I will start with the preface. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. We're good? Okay. Everyone in the back? Yeah. Sorrow managed to take over my happy days more than just once. I never gave up though. I just rerouted myself and began a new path through this journey called life alone. Throughout my journey, I sometimes lost my balance, going back and forth between pain and pleasure, and at times between right and wrong. Occasionally, I found it hard to recognize my own soul's reflection in front of a mirror, and so I would stop staring. Now in my mid-30s, I am confident, independent, positive, and passionate about life. I am no longer patiently waiting for someone to ignite my soul. Instead, I try to ignite as many souls as I can. Many of us live a life that entails more than we ever expected. I come from a family that went through our fair share of ups and downs, perhaps more than we bargained for. I allowed those same ups and downs and even the life of my father to shape many of my own decisions and views. Ours might have been a typical Iranian family in exile story, but I chose to make it extraordinary. I chose to believe that there was more to this life away from home, Iran. I always enjoyed writing, but never allowed myself to explore my talent. That is until I needed an escape route from the insanity that was building up inside my mind. One of my constant companions in life was pain. My own pain was bearable, but never that of someone's I cared for. When it came to breaking another's heart, I seemed to have difficulty. I would try to do so with poise and perhaps the cherry on top. One day that all changed. I became a woman I no longer recognized and a woman I detested. My inability to break my boyfriend's heart caused me to continuously lie to him. I was afraid the truth would hurt him, but it was my actions that eventually broke his heart. The pain I saw on his face that day left a scar on my own heart, a scar that will never fade. I mourned the death of our relationship. I mourned the loss of my integrity, honesty, and happiness. I was at a loss, not knowing what to do with all the pain that was building up inside of me. One night I picked up a pen and started to jot down my thoughts. Words began to form sentences, and sentences turned into a story. I wrote Zodiac Lovers because I finally came to terms of acceptance with myself and my life. I felt that my experiences might not only be entertaining and amusing for someone, but perhaps they might serve as guidance for another. I was never perfect at any one thing, but always good at a lot of things, possibly a gift of my Gemini personality. However, there is one thing that I feel I mastered, and that was being human. Every mistake turned into a learning opportunity. I decided that if I were going to allow others to laugh at me, I might as well laugh with them. After all, mistakes are a part of our learning journey. Again, this journey we call life. As I grew older and matured, I learned a lot from my own mistakes. Till now, I have lived a life filled with good, bad, and ugly memories, and enough experiences to last me 5 lifetimes. When I left my family in San Antonio, Texas, and decided to move to Southern California, I imagined my whole life waiting ahead of me. I was in my 20s and on a path to advance my career in retail management. As years passed, my standards changed. Patience grew, morals became more pure, tolerance for alcohol grew, and my cravings for sex faded as my need for love heightened. One thing never changed, though, and that was my relationship with my imagination. My imagination became another constant in my life that guided me through the highs and lows, especially during the nights when I slept alone in bed. I hated sleeping alone. I still do. I often slept on the couch watching television in my living room or reading a book. At every apartment I lived in, I had a fireplace. Sometimes I made a small blanket pallet on the floor next to it and fell asleep as the fire crackled away and faded into the night. I didn't realize I was running away from my loneliness until one day I fell in love. I began to despise my bed and loneliness even more when the man I had fallen in love with chose not to sleep next to me at night. Throughout my adult years, I used my imagination to cure and hide my pain. I used my imagination to bring a simple and unreal smile onto my lips. There were mornings when I didn't want to open my eyes and chose to sleep, allowing my imagination to wander through its own pleasurable journeys. There were evenings when I rushed to bed just as dusk took over the sky so that my imagination and I could plan my future together. Nights led to months, and months led to years of me and my imagination lying alone in bed or on the couch, wondering what it would be like to wake up next to another soul every morning. Regardless of the mistakes I made and the wrong turns I took, I continued to not regret. I became thankful for being able to find myself, something that I felt people searched their whole lives for. I wasn't always open to constructive criticism and feedback. However, throughout my career, I realized it is important to listen to what others are telling you. Perhaps one of the secrets to my courage was my curiosity and my need to know everything. I could never let anything end without closure. Somehow I figured out the reasoning for everything or allowed my imagination to make one up. I became self-reflective and perhaps even too judgmental on my life at times, yet I still accepted myself as I was and still am. Page 3 for those of you that are following. St. Petersburg, Russia, June 10th, 2018, 5 a.m. The morning sun slowly rises above the horizon once more. It is the season of white nights and romance in St. Petersburg. From late May to July, the sun shines endlessly over the Baroque and historic skyline of the city. Midsummer days live forever, the sky blushes pink, streaks sound of joy, and vodka soothes the souls. I fall in love with the whimsical ambiance of the city at first glance. My birthday, June 18th, is just a week away. I am turning 39. My life has taken so many turns along the way, but luckily, never towards a dead end. Roundabouts, however, do seem to be a constant theme these past few years. As I age, I realize the loss and gain of so many things and people. Today, however, while in the presence of an amazingly gorgeous Russian man, both inside and out, I admit my content with life. Andreas and I have been friends for over a decade now, friends with many benefits. We met back in Orange County, California, when we were both working in retail and have since then formed a relationship, a symbiosis, if you will. We're so different, yet we have become one, dependent on each other, perhaps I more than he. Last night, Andreas decides to bestow upon me an early birthday present, his love and affection. After an extremely romantic dinner at a small mom-and-pop restaurant hidden in the old streets of St. Petersburg, and a stroll by the river, we come back to our hotel room for what he likes to call babushka time. Andres is just over 6 feet tall, has light baby blue eyes, a shaved head, a muscular body, Russian accent, mad tango skills, and is possibly the best lover in the world. When we arrive back at the room, Andres quickly dims the lights, turns on some candles, and starts playing some good old Frank Sinatra. "May I have this dance, birthday girl?" he asks as he holds out his hands. Even though my birthday isn't for another week, I decide to take pleasure in celebrating it until the actual day arrives. I quickly grab hold of him, melting into his arm as he sways me around the room through a few songs, including my favorite, "That's Life." As Frank sings "When I'm back on top in June," Andreas slowly unzips my gold lace dress, allowing it to fall around my ankles. He then kneels down on both knees and lifts my legs up one by one, freeing me from my dress. I stand in the middle of our hotel room, 5 feet and 6 inches tall, thanks to my 3-inch heels. Andreas stands up and faces me in the darkness of the room, slowly leans in towards my ears and whispers the words, "Happy birthday" to me. A faint smile falls upon my lips as I, in my head, thank God for bringing Andres into my life. I'm wearing a forest green corset and matching thong covered with small paisley patterns sewn with gold silk thread. As my breasts sit comfortably in place, Andres slowly begins to rub my shoulders and his hands work their way under the corset. Before I know it, I am completely naked. He grabs hold of my waist, lifts me up into his arms, and carries me to the oversized bed fit for a Russian czar. We kiss, we laugh, we sing with Frank. Andres smokes cigarettes, I sip on wine. We make love all night long. He sleeps. I sit awake with the white St. Petersburg night. Slowly, the sun begins to beam from behind the purple shadow of the night. St. Petersburg is surprisingly warmer than I expected. It's my first trip to Russia, and how fortunate to be here during the nostalgia and comfort of the white nights, or as the locals call it, Belya Nochi. Thanks to Andreas and his connections, my book was recently translated into Russian, and my publicist secured a few book signing events for me. My mom and dad are in a room down the hall from us. I brought them specifically because my mom always dreamed of visiting Russia. For as long as I can remember, she talks of her fascination with the grand domes of the cathedrals that fill the skylines of Russian cities. Besides, I owe so much of my success to my parents, I can't imagine sharing these joyous days with anyone else. It's just past 5 in the morning and I need to sleep, but I can't. I'm content with life, more so than I ever imagined possible, considering all that I have been through. Still, my heart aches on a daily basis and my mind cannot remembering everyone who at some point or another played a role in my life. Perhaps I'm damned for feeling everything so deeply. I slowly crawl out of bed without making noise. I walk over to the window and push back the sheer curtains and stare out into the city and its beauty. The illuminated bridges that belt the Neva River are slowly descending. They sit raised for a few hours each morning to allow passage to the barges and vessels traveling through the river, as passerbys gaze onto the scene as if history is in the making. I suddenly stare into my reflection and quickly think of all the gray hairs that fill my head, which I thankfully covered with highlights. I'm getting old, but I still have a good few years left in me. They say 40 is the new 30, and I'll be able to tell you whether that's true or not in a few years. I feel good. I feel young. Never have I felt my age, always younger than what I really am. I snap out of my daze just as I hear Andreas' Russian accent fill the silence of the room. "Remember the movie Anastasia?" Andreas asks me. "I woke you. I'm sorry," as I say as I turn back and look at him. He is comfortably stretched out underneath the crisp white hotel sheets. I'm standing naked, which is my preference when I sleep at night. He stares at me with a look of satisfaction, and I immediately smile back at him. "I remember the movie quite well. It's still one of my favorites, you know," I say as I walk over to the table and light up a cigarette for him. You always read my mind, just like Yul Brynner and Ingrid Bergman read each other's minds in Anastasia. "One of these days, we're going to run away like them, too," he says to me with a devilish smile. I hand him the cigarette and kiss his cheek. His body is warm just like his heart. Never do I succumb to anything less than the best from him. I am always a priority for Andreas. His responsibility? Something I never prefer to be, but as time passes, realize I need. "Do you know what I'm thinking about right now, Andreas?" I ask him. "I have a pretty good idea what's going through that smart brain of yours. Never stops thinking. You seem to be reminiscing about the past," he says. I sit down on the bed next to him and hold an ashtray in my lap. As I stare into his eyes, I'm overwhelmed with so much emotion. I'm excited about the success of my book. I'm extremely happy that I brought my parents with me to Russia. I'm beyond any description by words when it comes to Andres' existence in my life. Still, I sometimes fade into the past. Without you, I would not be here right now. You do know that, right? I ask him. I will always do whatever I am capable of to keep a smile on your face, he says, leaning in to kiss my left cheek. I work my way into his arms and lean back into his chest and find comfort. You're right. I'm in the past, Andreas. I'm in Iran, Texas, California. I'm everywhere in the past right now, I say as I begin to shed a few tears. Andreas feels the tears rolling off my cheeks and onto his arms. He kisses my head and holds me even tighter. Once he finishes his cigarette, he picks up the phone and orders room service. Next, he pushes back all the curtains and throws on a white t-shirt. He walks over to a chair, grabs my robe, and with it, a copy of my book, and walks back towards me. Read it to me, he says. What, my book right now? I ask him. Why? Because it's going to make you feel better. You're a fast reader, and we have a good 12 hours before your meeting, and plus, you've never read the whole thing to me, just chapters at a time, he says as he clears off the desk on the opposite side of the room. I gather myself and my composure. I pull back my hair into a ponytail and walk over towards the desk. I sit on the oversized royal blue chair and look at my book. It actually came together pretty well. You know, everything is meant to be. There is no such thing as a coincidence. Everyone comes and goes for a reason. My years in retail were meant to be, my life in Los Angeles, my family's escape from Iran, and even you and I, Andreas, we were meant to be, I say to him, as I begin to flip through the pages of Zodiac Lovers. My book is the story of my own life. Andreas is mentioned in it too, not as one of the main characters, but definitely as someone who plays an important role in my life. Little did I know back when I first met him that one day he would become the main character in my real life. Just like Ingrid Bergman and Anastasia, some of my memories vanished before my eyes. Luckily, I do remember the most compelling and profound moments, although many of my days ended with heartbreak. Andreas is sitting on the bed looking at me with warmth. His piercing baby blue eyes bring so much comfort to my life, it's indescribable. How odd that I always chased the tall, dark, and handsome, and today I'm here with tall, white, and sexy. Andreas and the White Knights of St. Petersburg have much in common. White, romantic, mystical, and perhaps never-ending. I fold both legs up and sit on the big chair, Indian style. I flip through the first few pages and stop at chapter 1, and I begin to read to him. Page 16. There were some sweet memories of Iran too, between all the sorrows. My eldest sister Maryam married in Iran during the beginning of the Islamic Revolution. Those days, a wedding was not only a joyous celebration, but it was a sense of hope for better days to come. Her wedding was like the grand ball Cinderella attended. The ceremony took place early in the day at our house, as was customary, and the reception was in the evening at a relative's house in northern Tehran, an area known as Shamiran. The humongous house sat tucked away between trees and gardens on a hillside street, similar to the houses you find in the Los Feliz neighborhood in Los Angeles. The house was 3 stories tall, had a huge yard, basement, rooftop level, and stairs leading walkways in every direction. Around the large pool which sat in the middle of the courtyard were oversized turquoise ceramic vases filled with colorful flowers. It was the perfect setting, tucked away far from the city traffic and the soldiers roaming the streets. They were there waiting to find some simple thing to pick at, since by then the Islamic Revolution had banned most parties and joyous festivities. There was Persian pop music blasting through the house as guests danced in the crowded living room areas on all 3 floors. My youngest uncle from my dad's side of the family was a talented musician and friends with a couple of the famous singers from back then. One of the singers, Shaheen, attended my sister's wedding and sang the whole night through as the bride and groom danced away. Later on, when I became involved in the Iranian entertainment industry, I would meet Shaheen again and build a close relationship with him. That spring night in Tehran, all the rooms in the house were filled with large crystal vases, and inside them were colorful gladiola flowers. I could smell the fire cooking the kebabs. I could smell and see the smoke from the esfand, which filled up the air. Esfand was used to keep away evil eyes. It was an herbal seed burned on charcoal while one recited prayers. As I grew older, I picked up the tradition of burning esfand in my house every day. The scent of the night in the vast courtyard was nostalgic. Roses and red hyacinths circled the garden. I never forgot the sweetness of that night and the scent of Tehran. All I saw as I ran up and down the stairs were women's feet in high heels and men's tailored pants. There must have been at least 500 people there. Her immediate family alone, from both sides, made up at least 1/3 of the guest list. The whole place was lit up with hundreds of white light bulbs hanging throughout the courtyard and on the walls of the house. I was wearing a white lace dress and crocheted white cardigan over it. I recall my hair, straight brown and short just above my shoulders. How funny that I could always look back on that night and see myself running around and brushing my bangs out of my face as they would fall onto my eyes. I wanted to make sure I soaked in every bit of that wedding. At Mayam's wedding, I felt as if I was running through a fairy tale in search of a hidden treasure. Maybe I was just trying to fill my little brain with happy memories to reflect back on when I grew older. There was just one thing missing at the wedding celebration: my father. He had fled the country already, and there was no point in waiting for his return because no one knew when that day would be. Perhaps I would have liked for him to be there just as much as my sister Mariam did. She would have enjoyed his presence in the room as she said "Bale," which meant "I do," to her future husband, and I would have enjoyed him holding me in his arms, walking me through that lavish house in Shemiran. I always imagined that if I were to get married, it would be a festivity like that night. Though there would be some differences at my wedding. The sky above us wouldn't have the same glow. The ground we stood on wouldn't be of the same dirt. The air we breathed would have a different scent. The laughters we heard would all carry a sorrow hidden deep within. Most of all, my wedding wouldn't have the fresh smell of red roses, gladiolas, and hyacinths to fill up the air and leave an everlasting impression on my mind, building a new sweet memory. Everything would be the same, except it wouldn't be in Iran. Thank you. I do, before we get to the Q&A, I want to leave you with one quote from Rumi, one of my favorite poets, Persian poets. He says, "Grief can be the garden of compassion. If you keep your heart open through everything, your pain can become your greatest ally in your life's search for love and wisdom." And in my own words, I find that I am not just one, but I am many. I am an Iranian American, a woman, lover, mentor, sister, daughter, and a student of this world. After all, I am a Gemini. I don't know where Dan is.